The pre-dawn air at Teterboro Airport hung thick with November cold, the kind that seeped through worn jacket seams and settled into bones that remembered warmer places. Darius Cole's work boots crunched across the private aviation tarmac, his breath forming small clouds that disappeared into darkness. He carried his daughter Maya on his hip, her 6-year-old body heavy with sleep, her natural hair tucked under a pink knit cap her grandmother had made before the cancer took her, too. His other hand gripped a duffel bag that held everything they owned worth carrying: a change of clothes, Maya's favorite book about astronauts, the folded flag from his wife's military funeral, and a photograph of better days when he'd worn a uniform instead of a janitor's coveralls with Maintenance D. Cole stitched above the pocket. The private hangar loomed ahead, all glass and steel and money. Darius worked the night shift here, cleaning the executive lounges and restrooms, emptying trash bins that sometimes contained more wealth in discarded receipts than he made in a month. Maya came with him on weekends when his sister couldn't watch her, sleeping on the break room couch while he mopped floors and scrubbed toilets in a world designed for people who'd never touched a mop. He'd been doing this for 8 months, ever since the VA benefits ran out and the nightmares got bad enough that holding down a day job became impossible. The work was invisible, which suited him fine. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant no one asked questions about the scars on his back or why his hands sometimes shook when helicopters flew too low. "Daddy," Maya mumbled against his shoulder, her voice thick with sleep. "Are we at the airplane?" "Yeah, baby girl. Just for a few hours, then we'll get breakfast at that diner you like." If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. She nodded, already drifting back to sleep, trusting him completely in that way only children could. That trust was the heaviest thing Darius carried, heavier than any ruck march in Afghanistan, heavier than the guilt that lived in his chest like shrapnel doctors couldn't remove. The hangar's side entrance required a key card. Darius shifted Maya's weight and swiped the worn plastic, listening for the click that meant the lock had released. The door opened into a service corridor, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the smell of cleaning chemicals and jet fuel mixing into something industrial and familiar. He was halfway to the break room when voices stopped him. Not the usual overnight security guards making their rounds, but multiple voices, urgent and professional, coming from the main hangar floor. Darius hesitated. The main floor was supposed to be empty at 4:30 a.m. He wasn't supposed to be there until the cleaning crew supervisor gave the all clear, usually around 6 years when the first clients arrived. But Maya was already asleep again, and the break room was just past the hangar entrance. He could slip through, stay out of sight, let her rest somewhere warm while he started on the executive bathroom upstairs. He pushed through the double doors into the hangar proper and stopped cold. A Gulfstream G650 sat on the polished concrete floor, its white exterior gleaming under the overhead lights. The aircraft's door was open, stairs extended, and a small army of people moved around it with coordinated purpose. Ground crew, security personnel in dark suits, and someone who looked like a flight attendant in crisp corporate attire. And standing near the stairs, arms crossed, expression carved from stone, was a woman who made everything else in the hangar look cheap by comparison. She was black, mid-30s, with natural hair pulled back in an elegant twist that probably cost more than Darius's rent. She wore a charcoal business suit that fit like armor, heels that added 3 inches to her already impressive height, and a diamond watch that caught the light with every movement. Her dark skin seemed to glow under the harsh industrial lighting, and her eyes, sharp, assessing, absolutely exhausted, swept across the hangar like she was cataloging every detail for a report she'd file later. This was Simone Rousseau, though Darius didn't know it yet. Didn't know she was the CEO of Titan Security Solutions, the largest private military contractor on the eastern seaboard. Didn't know her company provided security for embassies, protected heads of state, trained foreign military units in counterterrorism. didn't know she'd built her empire from nothing after her father abandoned the family, after her mother worked 3 jobs to put her through Howard University, after she'd clawed her way up through a male-dominated industry that told her at every turn that black women didn't belong in the business of violence. All Darius knew was that he didn't belong here, not now, not in her space. He started to back toward the service door, moving slowly so as not to wake Maya. "Stop, right there." The voice was male, sharp with authority. A security guard Darius had never seen before stepped into his path, hand resting on the radio clipped to his belt. The man was white, early 40s, with the kind of build that came from protein shakes and gym memberships rather than real work. His uniform was pristine, badge polished, expression already settling into contempt. "This is a restricted area," the guard said, eyes moving from Darius's worn boots to his sleeping daughter to the maintenance uniform that marked him as service staff. "How'd you get in here?" "I work here," Darius said quietly, keeping his voice low. "Maintenance. I have clearance." "Not for this hangar, you don't. Not when we have a client." "I didn't know." "That's the problem with you people," the guard interrupted, stepping closer. "You don't know. You don't read signs. Don't follow protocols. Just wander around like you own the place." Darius felt the familiar heat starting in his chest, the anger he'd learned to swallow daily, learned to compress into something small and manageable. He thought about the Taliban fighter he'd killed with his bare hands in a Kandahar safe house. Thought about the bronze star in his duffel bag that he'd never shown Maya because explaining it meant explaining too much. Thought about the 18 months he'd spent leading a SEAL team through mountains where one wrong step meant everyone died. And he thought about the fact that none of it mattered here, in this moment, to this man who saw only a black janitor where a warrior used to stand. "I'll go," Darius said. "Just let me get to the break room." "You'll leave the hangar entirely." The guard's hand moved to his belt, not quite touching the expandable baton there, but the threat was clear. "And next time, read the schedule. When there's a private charter, maintenance doesn't have access. That's basic." Other people were watching now. Ground crew pausing their work, the flight attendant glancing over with vague curiosity, and Simone Rousseau, still standing by the aircraft stairs, her gaze sharp and measuring as she assessed the situation. Maya stirred against Darius's shoulder, her small hand clutching his jacket. "Daddy?" "It's okay, baby. We're just leaving." "Is that your kid?" The guard's expression shifted from contempt to something uglier. "You brought a child into a restricted area? That's a security violation. I should report you to—" "Report him to me." The voice cut across the hangar like a blade, feminine but carrying absolute authority. Simone Rousseau was walking toward them, heels clicking against concrete, her expression unreadable. She stopped a few feet away, and Darius felt her gaze sweep over him with the same assessment she'd given the hangar. He could see her mind working, cataloging details. His daughter's worn clothes, his own exhaustion, the duffel bag that looked military issue but had seen better decades. "This man says he's maintenance," the guard said, straightening under her attention. "But he's in a restricted area during your departure prep. I was just—" "Doing your job poorly," Simone finished. Her eyes never left Darius. "If he's maintenance, he has clearance to be in this facility. The restriction is on civilian access, not staff." The guard's face reddened. "Ma'am, with respect, your security is my concern, not yours." She turned to Darius fully now. "You work nights?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you bring your daughter because—" It was a question that could have been sympathetic or accusatory. Darius couldn't tell which, and he was too tired to care. "Because I don't have anywhere else for her to be at 4:30 in the morning, and she's not old enough to stay home alone." Something flickered in Simone's eyes. Not quite sympathy, but recognition maybe. Understanding that sometimes choices weren't really choices at all. "The break room is past this hangar?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Then get your daughter settled. We'll be departing in 20 minutes. After that, the space is yours." She turned away, dismissing both of them, already moving back toward her aircraft where real problems waited. But she paused, glanced back at the security guard. "And you," she said, her voice dropping to something colder. "You work for the airport, not for me. Next time you want to throw your weight around, make sure you actually understand the protocols you're supposedly enforcing." The guard's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Simone walked away, and the moment broke. Darius moved past the guard, feeling the man's anger like heat against his back. He made it to the break room, laid Maya down on the worn couch, tucked his jacket around her like a blanket. She mumbled something about breakfast and pancakes, and he kissed her forehead, breathing in the coconut oil he'd used on her hair the night before. Through the break room's small window, he could see into the hangar. Simone was at the base of her aircraft stairs now, talking to someone. A man in a suit who'd just arrived, carrying a briefcase and wearing the expression of someone delivering bad news. Darius turned away. Not his business, not his world. He grabbed his cleaning supplies and headed upstairs to the executive bathrooms, the ones with marble counters and automatic soap dispensers and mirrors so clean you could see every scar, every failure, every ghost that followed you home from war. Simone Rousseau stood at the base of the Gulfstream stairs and wanted to scream. Marcus Chen, her company's general counsel, had just informed her that Titan Security's biggest contract, a $40 million deal to provide protection services for State Department personnel in Lagos, was being pulled. Not because of performance issues, not because of budget cuts, but because Senator Richard Harding, chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, had decided that a black woman running a private military company was inappropriate optics for American interests abroad. He hadn't said it publicly, of course. He'd buried it in committee language about alignment with traditional defense partnerships and ensuring cultural compatibility with host nations. But everyone who knew how Washington worked understood the subtext. Simone Rousseau had gotten too big, too successful, too visible. And now the men who controlled the purse strings were reminding her that she existed at their pleasure. "They can't just cancel the contract," Simone said, her voice tight. "We have legal protections, performance benchmarks that we've exceeded. They can, and they are." Marcus was 50, Chinese-American, and had been with her since the company's founding. He was one of the few people who'd tell her the truth without flinching. "The senator has enough committee support to make this happen. And if we fight it publicly, he's threatened to open investigations into our hiring practices, our financial records, our what? Our right to exist?" Simone's hands clenched. "This is retaliation, Marcus. Pure and simple. I know, but proving it in court will take years and cost millions we don't have if we lose the Lagos contract. The board is already nervous. Half of them never wanted a woman running the company, let alone—" He stopped, but Simone finished the sentence in her mind. "Let alone a black woman who didn't come from money or military aristocracy or the right networks. She'd built Titan from nothing, started with a single government contract providing security training to local police departments. Grew it through competence, through delivering results, through being twice as good as her competitors because she had to be. She'd hired the best people regardless of background, veterans who'd been overlooked by traditional contractors, women who'd been told they didn't belong, immigrants who brought expertise from conflicts Americans had never heard of. And now, a senator whose own nephew had lost out on a Titan contract was going to destroy everything she'd built because his ego was more fragile than his patriotism. "What are my options?" she asked. Marcus hesitated. "The senator is hosting a defense appropriations dinner in D.C. tonight. If you were there, if you could speak with him privately, maybe find common ground." "You mean grovel?" "I mean survive." Marcus's expression was grim. "I know it's not fair, Simone, but fairness isn't the game we're playing." She looked up at her aircraft, at the symbol of everything she'd achieved. Thought about the 200 employees who depended on Titan's success. Thought about the veterans she'd hired who'd been rejected everywhere else. thought about the message it would send if she folded now, that black women could build empires, but they couldn't defend them. "Book me on the D.C. flight," she said finally, "and get me a meeting with Senator Harding, whatever it takes." Marcus nodded, already pulling out his phone. "The aircraft is ready. We can depart in 15 minutes. Simone started up the stairs, then paused. Through the hangar's interior windows she could see into the break room. The maintenance man, Darius according to the name on his uniform, was visible in profile, standing at a sink, washing his hands with methodical precision. His daughter was still asleep on the couch behind him. There was something about the way he moved. Economy of motion, constant awareness of his surroundings, the subtle checking of sight lines that spoke of training deeper than janitorial work. Simone had spent 15 years around military personnel. She knew how operators carried themselves, even after they'd left the service. And this man moved like someone who'd done things that required precision under pressure. Then again, maybe she was just projecting, seeing warriors where there were only tired fathers trying to survive. She continued up the stairs, leaving the ground behind. The Gulfstream's interior was designed for power. Cream leather seats, burled walnut tables, satellite connectivity that cost more per hour than most people made in a day. Simone settled into her usual seat, the one that faced backward so she could see anyone who approached. Her phone buzzed. A text from her younger brother, Antoine. "Mom's asking about Thanksgiving. You coming home this year, or are you going to keep pretending you don't have family?" Simone deleted the message without responding. Her mother lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Baltimore where Simone had grown up. She'd offered to buy her a house, to move her somewhere safer, somewhere without bars on the windows and gunshots at night. Her mother had refused, said she didn't need charity and didn't need her daughter's guilt money. They hadn't spoken in 8 months. The flight attendant appeared. Carla, a former Army logistics officer Simone had hired personally. "We're ready for departure, Ms. Rousseau. The ground crew is finishing final checks." "Thank you, Carla. Also, there's been a situation." Simone looked up, already tired. "What kind of situation?" "The security team we arranged to have waiting in D.C. just called. They can't make it. Their transport broke down outside Baltimore." "So, call a backup team." "I did. Everyone's committed to other contracts." Carla's expression was apologetic. "It's the defense dinner tonight. Every security company in the region is working the event." Simone felt the headache starting behind her eyes. She was flying into Washington, D.C. to beg a senator not to destroy her company, and she'd be doing it without her own security team. The irony was so sharp it cut. "Fine," she said. "We'll make do." Carla hesitated. "Ma'am, given the threats you've been receiving." "I'm aware of the threats." 3 letters in the past month, all variations on the same theme. Black women didn't belong in the military industry. Black women should stay in their place. Black women who got too big needed to be cut down to size. "But I'm not canceling this trip because some coward with a keyboard thinks I'm stepping above my station." "Yes, ma'am." Carla retreated to the galley. Simone pulled out her tablet, started reviewing the talking points Marcus had prepared. She needed to be perfect tonight. Charming, but not obsequious. Strong, but not threatening. Smart, but not challenging. All the tightrope walks black women in power learned to perform without appearing to perform at all. Outside the aircraft window, she saw movement in the hangar. The maintenance man was emerging from the building, his daughter awake now, holding his hand. He was talking to her, crouched down to her level, and even from this distance Simone could see the gentleness in the gesture. The daughter pointed at the Gulfstream, clearly excited. The man nodded, explaining something. The girl's face lit up with wonder. Then the engine noise increased, and Simone lost sight of them as the ground crew began maneuvering the aircraft toward the taxiway. She turned back to her notes. She had bigger things to worry about than a janitor and his daughter admiring an aircraft they'd never fly in. The problem started at 31,000 feet. They'd been airborne for 40 minutes, the flight smooth and routine. Simone had been reviewing contracts, making notes, preparing for battle. Carla had brought coffee. Good coffee, Ethiopian blend, the one small luxury Simone allowed herself. Then the intercom crackled. The pilot's voice, professional but tight, with something that made Simone's instincts prickle. "Miss Rousseau, could you come to the cockpit, please?" Simone was unbuckling before he finished the sentence. She made her way forward, knocked once, entered when the co-pilot released the lock. Captain Williams was mid-50s, former Air Force with 20,000 hours of flight time and a reputation for competence so solid that Simone had hired him away from a major airline. He was black, which mattered in an industry that still assumed command meant white. And he was currently staring at his instruments with the expression of a man who'd just discovered a problem with no good solution. "What is it?" Simone asked. "We have a hydraulic leak," Williams said. "Port side system. It's contained for now, but we're losing pressure faster than the backup can compensate. Can we make DC? Yes, but landing is going to be complicated. We'll need emergency equipment standing by. And—" He hesitated. "The leak is near the landing gear mechanism. There's a risk the gear won't deploy properly." Simone felt the familiar cold settling into her spine, the same cold she'd felt in Kabul when mortar rounds were incoming, the same cold she'd felt during the hostile takeover attempt 2 years ago when she'd almost lost everything. Fear was useless. Action was what mattered. "What are our options?" she asked. "We can divert to the nearest suitable airport. McGuire Air Force Base is 20 minutes south. They have emergency response, long runways, and I need to be in D.C. in 3 hours," Simone interrupted. "Is this aircraft safe to continue to Reagan National?" Williams met her eyes. "Probably. But probably isn't the same as certainly." The co-pilot spoke up, younger, white, nervous. "Ma'am, regulations require us to land at the nearest suitable facility when we have a hydraulic failure of this magnitude. Regulations also say the pilot in command makes the final determination," Simone said. She looked at Williams. "What would you do if this were a military flight? If the mission required getting to D.C.? Something shifted in Williams' expression. Recognition, maybe, that Simone understood what she was asking, that some risks were worth taking, some missions couldn't be aborted just because the odds weren't perfect. "I'd continue to D.C., he said, "but I'd want options if things go sideways." "Then give me options." Williams pulled up a navigation chart. "There's a private airfield outside Baltimore, Sterling Executive Airport. Small, but they have a long enough runway and emergency services. It's 15 minutes from D.C. by helicopter. If we divert there, you could still make your meeting." Simone calculated quickly. Time, risk, consequences. If she didn't make the dinner tonight, Senator Harding would interpret it as weakness, would use it as evidence that her company couldn't handle pressure, would pull the contract and move on to someone more reliable. But if they crashed trying to reach Reagan National, none of it would matter anyway. "Divert to Sterling," she said, "and Captain Williams, when we land, I want you to personally assess that hydraulic leak, because if someone sabotaged this aircraft, I need to know." Williams' expression darkened. "You think someone would—" "I think people who threaten me in writing aren't above escalating to action," Simone said. "And I think the timing of a hydraulic failure right before the most important meeting of my career is convenient enough to be suspicious." She returned to the cabin, pulled out her phone, and started making calls. First to Marcus, updating him on the diversion. Then to her head of operations, demanding a security audit of the aircraft's maintenance history. Then to the helicopter service she kept on retainer, arranging emergency transport from Sterling to D.C. Through the window, she watched clouds stream past, white and indifferent. Somewhere below, people were living ordinary lives, working ordinary jobs, facing ordinary problems that didn't include senators trying to destroy their life's work or aircraft malfunctions that might be sabotage. She thought about the maintenance man in the hangar, the one with the daughter who looked at planes with wonder. Thought about how simple his problems probably were compared to hers. And then she pushed the thought away, because pity was useless and she had work to do. Sterling Executive Airport was exactly what its name suggested, a facility designed for private aircraft and people with more money than patience. The runway was immaculate, the terminal building was all glass and brushed steel, and the ground crew wore uniforms that cost more than Darius Cole's entire wardrobe. The Gulfstream touched down hard, the pilot fighting the crosswind and the compromised hydraulics. Emergency vehicles followed them down the runway, lights flashing, but Williams kept the aircraft under control. They rolled to a stop near the maintenance hangar, and Simone was already unbuckling. She had 90 minutes to get to D.C., 90 minutes to save her company. Carla appeared with Simone's go-bag, already packed with everything needed for the dinner: evening gown, jewelry, makeup, shoes. "The helicopter's 10 minutes out, ma'am. They're sending their fastest bird." "Good, I'll change in the FBO lounge. Tell Williams I want his preliminary assessment of the hydraulic. Failure before I leave." Simone descended the aircraft stairs into crisp afternoon air that smelled like jet fuel and autumn leaves. The FBO manager was already approaching, a white man in his 40s with the practiced obsequiousness of someone who dealt with wealthy clients daily. "Ms. Rousseau, welcome to Sterling Executive. I'm Roger Patterson, facility manager. We've prepared our VIP lounge for your use, and your helicopter will have priority clearance." "Thank you, Mr. Patterson. I need to change immediately. Is the lounge secure?" "Absolutely. We have excellent security." "I'm sure you do." Simone was already walking toward the terminal, Carla beside her, the go-bag over one shoulder. Behind them, the ground crew was swarming the Gulfstream, examining the hydraulic leak under Captain Williams' supervision. The FBO lounge was designed to impress: leather sofas, a bar with top-shelf liquor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the runway, and absolutely zero privacy for changing clothes. "The bathroom," Simone said to Carla. "I'll change there." "Ma'am, it's a single stall. You won't have room to—" "Then I'll make room." She pushed into the women's restroom, which was at least upscale. Marble counters, good lighting, enough space to maneuver if she was careful. She hung the evening gown on the back of the door, started stripping off her business suit. Her phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. "Senator Harding just moved up the dinner schedule. He wants to meet in 90 minutes instead of 3 hours. Says if you can't make it, he'll interpret it as lack of commitment." Simone stared at the message, feeling the trap closing. Harding knew about the emergency landing, had to know, which meant he was testing her, seeing if she'd crack under pressure. She texted back, "I'll be there." Then she went back to changing, because survival meant refusing to let bastards see you break. Outside the FBO terminal, in the employee parking lot that nobody important ever visited, Darius Cole was unloading cleaning supplies from his pickup truck. He'd gotten the call 90 minutes ago. Sterling Executive needed emergency coverage for their night shift custodian who'd called in sick. The pay was double his usual rate, which meant he'd said yes before even asking what the job entailed. Now he knew. A private aircraft had made an emergency landing, would be here for several hours while mechanics assessed a hydraulic failure, and the FBO manager wanted everything perfect in case the client decided to stay overnight. Perfect meant every bathroom spotless, every surface gleaming, every trash can emptied before anyone important noticed it was full. Maya was with his sister for the evening, which was good. This job would run late, and he couldn't have her sleeping in another break room. Darius loaded supplies onto a cart, pushed through the service entrance, navigated the back corridors that kept people like him separate from people who flew in private jets. He could hear voices from the main terminal, expensive and urgent, the sound of people for whom time was money and delays were personal insults. He found the first bathroom on his checklist, the one attached to the VIP lounge. The sign on the door said, "Private, authorized clients only." He pulled out his master key, knocked twice out of habit, waited 3 seconds, then unlocked the door, and walked directly into Simone Rousseau, who was standing in front of the mirror in a black evening gown, struggling with a zipper that had caught on the fabric. They froze, both of them, the moment stretching into awkwardness. Simone recovered first. "This bathroom is occupied." "I'm sorry, ma'am. I was told to clean." "Well, you were told wrong. Come back later." Her voice was sharp, dismissive, the voice of someone who expected immediate compliance. But Darius had already seen what she couldn't hide. Her hands were shaking, and there were tears threatening at the corners of her eyes, held back by will alone. She was terrified, not of him, but of something bigger, something that had nothing to do with this bathroom or this moment. And despite every instinct that told him to just leave, just apologize and back out and let the powerful woman have her privacy, Darius heard himself say, "Your zipper's caught. You want help with that?" Simone's eyes met his in the mirror. For a long moment she didn't respond. Then, so quietly he almost didn't hear it, "Yes." He set down his cleaning supplies, moved closer. The bathroom suddenly felt very small. He could smell her perfume, something expensive and subtle, could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself like she was preparing for battle. "Turn around," he said gently. She did, presenting her back to him. The zipper had caught on a fold of fabric about halfway up. Darius's hands, scarred, calloused, used to violence more than gentleness, carefully worked the fabric free, then drew the zipper up slowly. "There," he said. "All set." Simone turned back to the mirror, adjusting the gown. It was beautiful, elegant, the kind of dress that probably cost more than his truck. She looked like power itself, like someone who could command armies and break empires. And then she put her hands on the counter and took a shaking breath, and Darius saw the crack in the armor. "Bad day?" he asked. She laughed, bitter and sharp. "That's one way to put it. You want to talk about it? Why would I talk to you?" The words came out harsh, defensive. Then Simone closed her eyes, softened her voice. "I'm sorry. I don't even know who you are." "Darius, I clean bathrooms for a living." He paused. "And sometimes I listen, when people need someone who doesn't matter enough to repeat what they hear." It was the truth, raw and honest. He was nobody. A janitor who'd once been something more, but that was history, buried under years of grief and loss and the slow erosion of believing he had value. Simone studied him in the mirror, really looked at him for the first time. He wondered what she saw. A black man in his late 30s, work-worn and tired, unremarkable in every way except the stillness he carried, the kind that came from learning to wait in ambush for hours without moving. "There's a senator," she said finally, the words coming slowly like she was surprising herself. "He's trying to destroy my company, not because we did anything wrong, but because he doesn't think women like me should have the kind of power I've built. And tonight I have to smile and charm and convince him that I'm not a threat, even though we both know I am." "Sounds like a man who's afraid of you," Darius said. "Fear and respect look the same from a distance, but only one of them keeps you alive." She turned from the mirror, faced him directly. "Do you ever have to bow to someone you know doesn't deserve it?" Darius thought about the security guard at Teterboro, the one who'd treated him like garbage for daring to exist in the wrong space. Thought about the VA administrators who'd denied his disability claims 3 times before finally approving them. Thought about every person who'd seen his skin and his circumstances and assumed he was less than human. "Every day," he said quietly. "Every single day." Something passed between them, a recognition that transcended circumstance and station. They were both warriors in their own way, both fighting battles no one else could see. Simone's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression hardened. "My helicopter's here. I have to go." "Good luck," Darius said. "With the senator." She paused at the door and looked back. "You know, you move like the military. And your hands—" She gestured vaguely. "Those aren't janitor's hands." Darius felt his chest tighten. "Used to be something else. A long time ago." "What branch?" He should have lied, should have deflected. But something about this moment, this woman, made lying feel like betrayal. Navy, he said. SEAL Team 3. Simone's eyes widened, just slightly. You're a SEAL. Was. Not anymore. Why? She stopped, shaking her head. Never mind, not my business. No, Darius said. It's not. She left without another word, heels clicking away down the corridor. Darius stood alone in the expensive bathroom, staring at his reflection, seeing the ghost of who he'd been overlaid on who he'd become. Then he picked up his cleaning supplies and went back to work, because that's what invisible men did. They cleaned up other people's messes and pretended not to exist. But in the mirror, just for a moment, he'd seen himself through her eyes, and he'd remembered what it felt like to matter. The helicopter cuts through the Washington, D.C. evening, carrying Simone Rousseau away from a confrontation that will define her future. She's made the 90-minute deadline to Senator Harding's dinner, but her mind remains anchored to an unexpected encounter at Sterling Executive Airport with a janitor who moves like a warrior and speaks with the wisdom of someone who understands survival's true cost. That janitor is Darius Cole, former Navy SEAL Team 3, now reduced to cleaning bathrooms after a back injury and medical discharge ended his military career. Their first meeting occurred hours earlier when Simone's aircraft suffered a suspicious hydraulic failure, forcing an emergency landing. In a moment of vulnerability, sitting on a bathroom counter in an evening gown she couldn't zip alone, Simone found herself confiding in this stranger who offered help without judgment. Darius recognized something in her, the same exhaustion and determination he'd carried through 7 combat deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, and classified locations. When she mentioned her military contracting company, he revealed his past: SEAL Team 3, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, and the mission that ended everything. He'd broken protocol to save his entire team from an ambush in Kandahar, succeeding in bringing everyone home alive but losing the high-value target and taking shrapnel to his spine. The Navy called him a hero while simultaneously discharging him as damaged goods. His story resonated with Simone because she understood systems that use people and discard them. She'd built Titan Security from nothing, growing from a basement office with 2 employees to a 200-person operation generating $80 million in revenue annually. She'd done it while being the only black woman running a major military contractor, succeeding through competence in an industry designed to exclude her. Now, Senator Richard Harding wants to take it all away. At the dinner, held in the Hay Adams Hotel's private dining room, Harding delivers his ultimatum with practiced cruelty. He questions her company's institutional stability, code for her race and gender. He suggests the Lagos contract, worth $40 million in taxpayer money, requires more traditional leadership. In a private library, he makes his demand explicit: resign, hand control to someone with the right profile, white, male, military background, or face a years-long audit that will destroy her reputation regardless of the outcome. It's extortion, pure and calculated. Simone has 2 weeks before the committee vote removes the decision from Harding's hands. She leaves the dinner shattered, crying silently in the helicopter back to Sterling Executive. The pilot, a former Marine, says nothing, professional discretion that somehow makes her isolation worse. When they land, she goes directly to the same bathroom where she met Darius earlier, collapsing on the marble counter in tears. Darius finds her there. Against every instinct telling him to respect her privacy and return to his work, he knocks on the doorframe. Something about this moment reminds him of Kandahar, of finding their local translator ready to end his life after the Taliban murdered his family. Sometimes walking away is cowardice disguised as respect. When Simone reveals Harding's ultimatum, Darius shares the philosophy that cost him his career. Some battles aren't worth winning if you have to become something you hate to win them. He tells her about his wife, Sarah, who died of cancer while he was fighting the VA for benefits, who told him that being broken doesn't mean being defeated. It just means you fought something worth fighting. His words catalyze something in Simone. She reveals the full scope of her situation: death threats received over the past month, all telling her that black women don't belong in the military industry. Her regular security team couldn't reach D.C. due to a suspicious vehicle breakdown. The hydraulic failure on her aircraft might have been sabotage. The maintenance logs show unauthorized access between the scheduled service and departure. Someone is actively trying to intimidate her, possibly hurt her. Simone makes an extraordinary request. She needs protection, someone she can trust. She asks Darius to accompany her back to New York, to stay in her apartment while she decides whether to fight or surrender. She'll pay triple his rate. She can provide a guest suite for his 6-year-old daughter Maya. Darius should refuse. His back injury limits his physical capabilities. He hasn't done protection work in 6 years. He's just a janitor now, trying to build a quiet life for his daughter away from the violence that defined his previous existence. But he agrees, because he sees himself in Simone's situation, someone being destroyed for refusing to stay in their assigned place, because his daughter deserves to grow up in a world where powerful people can't crush you simply for existing, because some part of him that survived Kandahar recognizes that this is a fight worth having. They fly to New York on Simone's repaired Gulfstream. During the 90-minute flight, she shares her complete story. Growing up poor in Baltimore after her father abandoned them, telling her mother that their daughter would never amount to anything. Building Titan specifically to employ veterans other contractors rejected. Too damaged, too old, too black, too anything except what traditional companies wanted. Creating a culture where merit could actually triumph over connections. Darius shares his own fall. From decorated SEAL to janitor, through shrapnel injuries, his wife's death from cancer, and the realization that the Navy discharged him not because he was physically broken, but because he'd proven he couldn't be trusted to prioritize missions over people. He carries his Sig Sauer P226, the same model from his deployment days, cleaned and maintained even when he thought he'd never use it again. They land at Teterboro just after midnight. Marcus, a former Army Ranger on Simone's security team, meets them. He initially questions Darius's presence. A janitor in uniform hardly looks like professional protection, but recognition passes between them when Marcus spots the concealed weapon and hears SEAL Team 3. Operators recognize each other. Marcus briefs Darius during the drive to Manhattan. Harding isn't just trying to take Simone's company. He's trying to break her, making an example showing people like her the limits of how high they can rise. The threats are serious enough that she's bringing in outside help instead of relying on her regular team, suggesting she suspects the leak might be internal. Simone's Upper West Side apartment speaks of wealth without ostentation. The security room contains everything needed if things go catastrophically wrong: AR-15 rifles, body armor, ammunition, monitors showing every camera in the building. Darius settles in for the first watch, his daughter arriving in 7 hours. Before beginning his vigil, he makes one crucial call to Chief Marcus "Hammer" Thompson, his former team leader who dragged him from the Kandahar ambush wreckage and stayed through 6 surgeries. Darius needs a deep background on Senator Harding, connections to private military contractors, history of threatening people, capability for escalation beyond political pressure. Hammer agrees to run the check but warns him. Politicians are more dangerous than insurgents because at least with insurgents, you know who the enemy is. As 1:15 a.m. becomes 2 a.m., Darius watches the monitors showing empty hallways and sleeping buildings. He thinks about the promise he made after Sarah died, to focus on Maya, give her a life free from his darkness, protect her from the truth about what he'd been and done. Now, he's breaking that promise because someone needed help and he never learned to walk away from people drowning. The monitors show nothing but quiet normalcy. But Darius keeps watching, keeps waiting, keeps preparing for the moment when everything will go wrong. Because in his experience, it always does. 2 broken people have found each other in a bathroom at an executive airport and decided that maybe, just maybe, they can help each other stand. One fights to keep what she built, the other fights to prove he's still capable of protecting someone. Both understand that some battles define who you are, not by whether you win, but by whether you had the courage to fight at all. Maya arrived at dawn, eyes wide at the penthouse. That afternoon, 6 Navy SEALs in dress uniforms appeared at Simone's door, Darius's old team, summoned by Hammer. They'd discovered Senator Harding had hired the men who sabotaged the jet. The SEALs stood at attention in Simone's lobby as the media arrived, saluting Darius publicly. The footage went viral. By evening, Harding resigned under pressure, the Lagos contract was secured, and Simone offered Darius a position as Titan's head of security. 1 year later, Darius and Maya lived in the guest suite, now family. Simone taught Maya to fly in simulators while Darius rebuilt security protocols, his daughter's laughter filling spaces where silence once lived. They'd all found home. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.